Hello again, everyone. Welcome back to the channel. This is Michael from TOEFLresources.com, and today we have my new guide to the 5th TOEFL speaking question. This one is sometimes called the problem and solution question. In the video today, I'm going to describe how this question is constructed. I'm going to continue by giving you a template you can use to answer the question, and I will conclude by walking you through the creation of an answer using that template. All right, let's get started by describing how the question is constructed. Now, the thing to remember is that ETS, the creators of the TOEFL, is very consistent in the way they put together these questions. They have some formulas, they have some techniques, and they seem to use those week after week after week. That means once you learn the proper technique for solving the question, you can apply that technique every week. And I think that once you understand that, it will make your job a little bit easier. Hopefully, too, it will increase your score. So, how does the question look? Well, first, you listen to a short conversation between a man and a woman. Conversation is usually 1 minute, maybe as long as 90 seconds. One of the speakers in that conversation will have a problem related to their university life. The problems here usually relate to things like projects and assignments, extracurricular activities, or even scheduling. Usually this conversation is between two students, but it could be between a student and a professor. Note that in that case, it will never be the professor that has the problem. I've never heard that happening. Although if it does happen, it won't affect the way you structure the answer. So don't worry about it in any case. In that conversation, two solutions to the problem will be suggested. Usually, the speaker without the problem will suggest both of these. However, one or both could be suggested by the student with the problem. The person with the problem will give details about why those solutions are not good, and in the end, they will not actually choose one of them. Keep in mind again that no matter who actually suggests the solutions, it doesn't affect the way you put together the answer. The way you put together the answer never changes. That's what I really want to emphasize in all my videos, that the way you put together your answer is never going to change. So just memorize that way and use it. Now, the actual question will look something like one of these. I'm going to read the first one, not the next two. It could say something like, the speakers discussed two possible solutions to the woman's problem. Briefly summarize the problem and then state which of the solutions you recommend and why. The other two are pretty much the same. You're asked to summarize the problem and then pick one of the solutions and why you picked it. Remember, it's not just the woman who could have the problem, the man could also have the problem. You're given just 20 seconds to prepare and 60 seconds to speak. So today, as a sample, I want to use a question from the TOEFL Quick Prep collection, specifically from Volume 2, page 31. I can't give you the conversation here because that's owned by ETS, but fortunately this one's available for free. I'm going to post a link in the video description to the PDF which contains the transcript. If you can't find it right away, just look for the one about a broken computer. Now keep in mind that even if you don't have the quick prep collection for some reason, the video will still be useful to you, because the point of this video is to show you the universal structure that you can use when answering these questions. The actual content here is less important than the template, than the structure I'm going to give you. But since it is available online, I suggest you download the PDF and follow along. All right, so you need to take some notes while you are listening to the conversation. Note-taking is difficult, and these notes represent an ideal. Even I can't take notes that are this good when I'm listening to the conversation, but this is basically my perfect scenario. And also, it shows you the kind of stuff that you should be taking notes about. First of all, you need to get some notes about what the problem is. The problem is stated near the very beginning of the conversation. In this case, she states that her computer is being repaired. She states later that it won't be ready until the end of the week. And most importantly, she states that she won't be able to finish her papers on time because of this. By papers, I mean essays or assignments. So you need to get as many details as you can about the problem. None of these details are unimportant. If you can make notes about them, if you can repeat them coherently in your answer, they will help your score. So get detailed notes about what the problem is. Next up, you need to get notes about the first suggestion, which is stated a little bit later. In this case, the suggestion is to use the computer lab. And then I used the green here to show myself that I was now mentioning details about the objection to this suggestion. Remember, I said that the student with the problem will object to the suggestions because they're not perfect. In this case, her objection is, but it is too noisy there and she can't concentrate. It's really busy this time of year, even in the morning and evening. And again, all of the details about the objections are useful. So get as many notes as you can. Lastly, I made some notes about the second suggestion, which comes near the end of the conversation. In this case, the suggestion is to call the computer shop and ask for faster repairs. But they are closed today and tomorrow because of the long holiday weekend. Again, I got the problem and I got the objections. One technique for taking good notes is that you're not using complete sentences, and you might even make grammar mistakes, as I did, embarrassingly, in my notes. You're just trying to get the details. Grammar comes next. Okay, so I've got my notes, and now I need to actually answer the question. Here, by the way, is the way that the question is phrased in this particular example, just like I showed you a moment ago. How do I actually answer the questions? Well, you can use a template. I've justified my use of templates in all the other videos I've presented. Needless to say, I agree with their use. You're not going to get a penalty for using a template. In fact, it will probably help your score. What's the template for this question? Well, here it's a 6-part template. This is the longest template of all. I begin by stating the problem, and I just use the phrase, the woman's problem is, or the man's problem is. I'm going to use 2 sentences here. I'm going to state the problem and the details. just from my notes. Then I'm going to use a transition. In this case, 2 possible solutions are suggested. You don't need to change the transition in your answer. You can just blindly use mine. It's okay. Next, I'm going to briefly list the suggestions and the objections. First of all, she could fill in the blank. However, fill in the blank. Secondly, she might be able to fill in the blank, but in my video last year, I suggested that you not mention the objections. If you're running short of time, you can leave them out, but recently I've kind of changed my mind, and now I really do want to hear the objections. The question is specifically asking you to summarize the problem, and I think the objections are a key part of the problem. So try to mention them here. Next up, you state your preference. In my opinion, the woman ought to, and then quickly just repeat the first or second suggestion. Next, you mention your first reason for this. Firstly, and then give me what you think. That's not coming from your notes. That's actually coming from your brain. You need to think originally a little bit. And I'm going to talk about the kinds of things you can say here in just a moment. Lastly, of course, you state your second reason. Moreover, and then whatever you think. All right, here is my sample answer to the question we've been working with from the TOEFL Quick Prep collection. I begin by simply stating the problem, and I'm using the template just like I created it. The woman's problem is that her computer is being repaired and it won't be ready until the end of the week. As a result, she won't be able to work on some important papers. Then my transition. 2 possible solutions are suggested. And I state the suggestions and objections. First of all, she could work in the computer lab. However, it is noisy and hard to concentrate there. Secondly, she might be able to call the repair shop and see if they can fix it sooner, but it is closed today and tomorrow for the long weekend. Then I state my preference. In my opinion, the woman ought to go to the computer lab. My first reason. Firstly, conditions at the computer lab are not perfect, but if some of the students are particularly noisy, she could ask a staff member to talk to them on her behalf. In addition, she will probably just get used to all of the noise after a few days. Lastly, I state my second reason. Moreover, waiting 2 days to call the repair shop is foolish. If she calls and they tell her it is impossible to fix her machine more quickly, she will have wasted even more time she could have spent completing her assignments. So I just used the templates. I didn't change anything. They work. Now, as I said, I want to talk a little bit about the content in the first 2 reasons. Now, it's important that you not simply repeat the objections here. You've already mentioned the objections at this part of your answer, right? So you can't say, I think she ought to go to the computer lab. Firstly, she could wait 2 days to call them. No. Don't just repeat that. You need to either expand on her objection or challenge her objection. So here, yes, I talked about noise, but I discussed why noise is not a problem. So I expanded and I challenged what she said in the conversation with new details and new information, new arguments. Lastly, here I specifically pointed out why waiting 2 days to call the computer shop is a bad idea. So when giving my reasons, I included a bit of original content. I didn't just repeat stuff that she said in the conversation. That's key, I think, to getting a good score here. Now, what else did I do to make my answer a bit more sophisticated? Well, I did the same things that I've mentioned in all my other videos. So I'm not going to go into too much detail, but I will point out that I used this discourse phrase as a result. That's a key phrase that will help you get a good score. I also used in addition. That's another key phrase. I used a conjunction, but. I didn't want to repeat the word papers, so I used assignments down below. Likewise, I didn't want to repeat the word computer for the third time, so I just said fix her machine. Varying your vocabulary is another good way to push your score up a little bit. In the video description, I will include some links that talk about things like conjunctions and compound sentences, and some links that talk about how to use discourse phrases like as a result. So, a few general guidelines, and I know I'm repeating myself here, but this is important. Use these discourse phrases as a result, consequently, moreover, therefore, on the other hand, stuff like that. Just spend about 25 to 30 seconds talking about the problem and solutions. The prompt does use the word briefly when it asks you to summarize this. So don't spend too much time. 30 seconds at the absolute most. If you are a slow speaker, you can cut the transition from the template. That'll save you a couple seconds, and it's not too important. If you're a really slow speaker, as I said, cut the summary of the objections. That will reduce your score, but maybe you have no other choice. Use some compound sentences with conjunctions like so, but, and. And as I said, you should respond to those objections instead of just repeating them. Use your brain a little bit here. You're not just repeating stuff like in all the other speaking questions, or all the other integrated speaking questions, I should say. I've added a new section to all my videos, rumors, gossip, and tricks. Well, this one is mostly unchanged since 2006. There's nothing tricky here. Your textbooks are probably up to date as far as this question goes. Remember, though, there could be a professor in the conversation, but it won't affect how you answer it. Just don't be surprised by this. Be prepared for 15 or 16 lines of dialogue. It might be shorter than that, but it could be pretty long. Not only that, but the description of the problem and the objections might be kind of broken up by interjections. The student isn't going to just come out and all at once in one big block of text tell you what the problem is. The problem will be revealed, maybe, over the course of 2 or 3 or 4 lines. Likewise, the suggestions will kind of be broken up a little bit. It's a dialogue. It's not a monologue. Be prepared for that. Lastly, I guess if you've heard or seen anything new in this question, please leave a comment below. I will check it out and update the video in 2019. That's all I have to mention about this kind of question. I will say if you want to find more of this stuff, please visit me at TOEFLresources.com. At that site, you can find all of my content about the whole test, and you can sign up for my writing or speaking evaluation services. Meanwhile, if you do have any questions about TOEFL Speaking number 5, please leave a comment below, and I promise you I will answer as soon as I can. All right, that's all for now, guys. I will see you next week. Goodbye.